Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everyone. Chris, can you do a ho 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 from New York?
Yes, ho ho ho. Happy holidays.
You can already tell this is the holidays episode this month in German, Swiss, and Austrian startups, December 2022. And as you've heard, Chris is already here, and Chris has his Christmas present already to show, right? You got a black belt in geography.
I have a black belt in geography. Here it's
That is so
geography. Awesome. Geography, it actually says. That's the Christmas present I got from Joe. So thank you for that, because we will talk about German cities. And also, since I don't own a Christmas sweater, I'm just wearing a bathrobe, which I think everybody should do on Christmas. So that's my Christmas style.
Yeah, it's a very relaxed Christmas. So you don't have to dress up. If you are Chris, you can dress as you like on Christmas.
Sure.
Sure. Welcome to this month in German, Swiss, and Austrian startups. Our startup news wrap up for December 2022 by Startuprad.io with Chris from New York and me from Frankfurt. We recorded this news episode on December 19th, 2022. Keep in mind, this news episode covered everything since our last news episode. And as always, all news not yet included here will be published in our next news episode, which will be published in January 2023. Our first news, 2023. Guys, another year's over. What do you say about this, Chris?
Doesn't feel like it. The weird thing was I recently did like a reflection exercise and thought, oh, the whole year was murky. And then we were encouraged to write down highlights and lowlights. And it was a couple of highlights that I had forgotten about. So I can recommend everybody to just have a look at your calendar, go through your iPhone photos, and you will realize that probably things were better than you remembered.
Chris, can you tell us a little bit about the highlights?
Well, actually, I was also in Vegas last week. That was a highlight. I didn't gamble, but I was in Vegas only for the second time in my life, and I liked it much more. I sat 3 hours at the buffet at the Excalibur, which is not like the greatest buffet in Vegas, and I watched The White Lotus. So I was watching this American TV show about rich, horrible white people in the middle of this like 3 hour long buffet where I just sat around and had like food all the time. I thought I did Vegas right. So that was a highlight. And obviously like the biggest highlight is working here with you.
Awesome. We also have some highlights in the news, right? When we've been meandering enough.
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that one. You already had the Vegas highlights. Enpal makes huge fundraising in the current environment, more than 800 million euros. Sennder doubles its valuation in the next funding round to $2 billion and has already 60 million commitments according to press reports. The funding environment may be bleak, but investors announced new funds for venture capital and private equity investments worth $3.1 billion targeting startups and scaleups in GSA or Europe just in the last month. One blog asked if the time of rocket internet is over. Meta Labs raises 200 million and a big heist drives a startup into insolvency, as well as Getir buys Gorillas for $1.2 billion, a far cry from Gorillas' former $3 billion valuation. Let's talk startups, but first our enablers. Invest in Hessen. This show was made possible by Hessen Trade and Invest with the brand Invest in Hessen. You can learn more about them at www.invest-in-hessen.com. We also run a dedicated sub-podcast with all our interviews and news in cooperation with them. You can have a look at the Linktree link and Startupradio, the best way to identify investors and cooperation partners for early stage startups. You can sign up for early access at startupradio.com. Chris, you want to enlighten us about the Enpal fundraising, and I take over when you're done with the Rocket Internet corner.
Yeah, we're going back to that. So yeah, Enpal fundraising, you kind of hinted at it already. Enpal could double their valuation in a new founding round. The Berlin-based unicorn closed 855 million euro in-depth funding to accelerate the adoption of solar energy. And then we have Sennder with SENNDER. It's a digital forwarder unicorn raising new money at a $2 billion US valuation. According to a report we found, they already have 60 million commitments. And one thing that really not caught us by surprise, but we thought was definitely worth emphasizing is that fundraising for VCs went quite well, and more than 3.1 billion euros worth of new investment funds have been closed. So the largest is EQT Ventures. It has money if your startups need it. EQT Ventures 3 closes Europe's largest venture capital fund committed to early stage tech startups. Money will go to startups in Europe and North America. For more funds, wait for our later section with new fund announcements. But you can also learn more and send in pitches under a link that we have in the show notes. Maybe you should also send some pictures if you have nice ones. And then Rocket Internet. Rocket Internet, we were wondering if it has already seen its best years. I mean, not that we are the best measuring stick here, but it also got quieter in our show about them. So mucho trouble over at Rocket Internet, wrote Robin Waters in a read-worthy newsletter for tech.eu. And the article also asked if their era is over. And they based this assumption or this question on staff cuts and an investment stop. So also, if you want to know more, the link to the more detailed article about this is in our show notes. Back to you and the startup brand ranking that you devoured.
So to say, right. There is an annual brand ranking by an agency called Jung van Matsch. They publish this annually and they call it German Startup Brand Ranking. I think the name is quite telling. Some of the top 50 startup brands are known from our news. It includes About You, Flink, Numa Group, Git Quinn, Vivid, Flaschenpost, Tier Mobility, Solar, Enpal, Sono Motors, and Trade Republic. Meta Labs raises 200 million US dollars. The Berlin, Germany-based developer of ZKSYNC, Sync, I do believe, a solution that reduces the cost of Ethereum transactions, raises 200 million US dollars in Series C funding. Not Ocean's 11, but still big. Berlin-based luxury watch marketplace Watchmaster was one of the largest marketplaces of its kind. After a spectacular robbery where 10 million euros worth of watches have been stolen, the company has to file for insolvency. And we've been talking about it on and off and tweeting about it quite a lot. Getir, the Turkish competitor, will take over Gorillas as in a 1.2 billion US dollar deal. You have to know that Gorillas was once valued at 3 billion US dollars, and according to other press reports, the founder of Gorillas had to sell his remaining stake already at the discounted price back to the company. Let's do a little bit housekeeping and time to brag. We will be back in the new year 2023 with the first new episode towards the end of January. As far as we can tell right now, our schedule got little bit screwed up. Sorry, it depends on the funding round of a startup. Joe got featured, so meaning me, at toptierstartups.com. They write, want to know about German language startups? Joe Manager is your guy. And one more thing, we're pretty proud of that. You know, November is the time that Spotify gives you their annual wrap, meaning you can see what you've been doing. They provide you some statistics and so on and so forth. And what we found pretty amazing is our podcast is in the top 5% of the most frequently shared podcasts globally for Spotify. And that is just awesome. Thank you, guys. Chris, you are an ecosystem guy, aren't you?
That's what they say. So, we found a couple of interesting articles about the general startup ecosystem in Germany, or also beyond Germany. So one of them is by Amy O'Brien on Sifted, writing about a trend when it comes to the finance space, saying that we should forget neobanks. So the banks that are catering with a more, let's say, bare bone product to consumers, and we should forget about them. But because in 2022 it's B2B fintech that investors find sexy. We have a link to the worrying state of European tech in 2022. It's an annual EU tech. It is about annual EU tech funding expected to drop to $85 billion, and 15 other key takeaways there.
Yeah, also from Robin Wouters at TechEU, I can add.
Okay, there you go. And you can find the link in the show notes. And then if we focus on the ecosystem in GSA, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, the KfW, die Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau, did some research. And in German venture capital is going almost exclusively to men-led startups. So yeah, still a lot of work to do there, apparently, to get more women, probably not even to get more women into funding startups, but rather to get more money to the women, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then Exist Women, the German government pledges 6.5 million euros for stipends for female founders. So probably just like a drop in the bucket here, but still there is a program for the women there by the government. Then 76% of Germans buy their Christmas presents online. Corona effect here still holds, one could say. Before Corona, only 60% of the people bought presents online. But German online sales in general shrink by 1/6 or 16.8% around Christmas. And there is a report about the state of the German blockchain ecosystem, talking about things that shrink right now, probably.
I'll take over in Hobbs. Exactly. I do a little bit of Hobbs, and then you can prove your black belt in German geography, right?
Yes. I also have to ask you, is this a typo? Or was this a joke that I did get? Maybe not. One doesn't know. Anyway, Hobbs, Frankfurt.
Germany's first cannabis startup lists on Frankfurt Stock Exchange ahead of the legalization. Related, Canopy Growth founder and former CEO invests privately in German-listed cannabis startup Symbiotic, which is working to use cannabinoids in medicine that are the oils out of cannabis. Breezy Brands starts the first cannabis marketplace for pharmacies in Germany. Going a little bit to Cologne, Bionomics, a Cologne, Germany-based provider of a SaaS platform to support enterprise customers with their commercial decisions, raises 13 million euros in Series A funding. Going to the very north in Hamburg, and I think there I hand over to Chris, right?
Oh, yeah. I was just pointing up because Hamburg is in the north. So Hamburg-based Fashion Cloud, a software provider for wholesale fashion, raises 25 million euros. In Planegg Martinsried, which is basically in the suburbs of Munich, there's German biotech company Catalym. They raised 50 million euros in Series C funding. In Augsburg, also in Bavaria, a bit north of Munich, there's Dropbox, which we all know, or a lot of us know and use. And Dropbox bought the Augsburg-based encryption company Boxcryptor to enable end-to-end encryption for business clients. Itzehoe, very far up in the north, close to the Northern Sea, is the home of Custom Cells. And Itzehoe and Tübingen, German-based battery cell manufacturer, and Custom Cells raised 60 million euros in a Series A funding. Constance, very much in the south, right next to the border of Switzerland at Lake Constance, is the home of FruitCore, a robotics startup that just raised 23 million euros to meet the increasing need for robots in small and medium-sized enterprises. And in Switzerland, at the other end side of Lake Constance, take the sting out of frontline communications, says Beekeeper, a company that added $50 million to their hive. And apparently they are a good company for all kinds of puns. And in Austria, Go Student, a SoftBank-backed education startup valued at $3 billion, has commenced a second wave of layoffs hitting over 100 jobs, sources say. And we go back to the delivery startups because there's an Austrian subsidiary of the German delivery service Flink, which had to file for insolvency. Now I'm giving back to you, talking about the VC funds. We already said that you have more information about funds who are willing to give away money. I mean, they're never willing to give away money.
Yes, to invest money, to make more money, exactly.
Yeah.
We did some calculations. We have values in euros, in US dollars, and in Swiss francs here, but they are very, very close right now. So you can almost get it one-on-one. It's a little bit over 3.1 billion US dollars, euros, or a little bit less Swiss francs right now. VS Squared Ventures unveils a new 165 million fund for early stage deep tech startups. Oh, by the way, I forgot, all of those funds are targeting GSA or Europe as a whole. Berlin-based VC Cavalry Ventures announces the first close of its third fund with 160 million euros. London-based One Peak closes third fund, One Peak Growth number 3, at 1 billion, targeting B2B software companies in Europe. Sorry, the 1 billion was US dollars. TX Ventures launches 100 million Swiss franc fintech investment fund. Berlin-based VC Power Ventures rebrands to Square One and announces new 100 million enterprise software and SaaS fund. The European Investment Fund pumps 50 million into climate tech VC World Fund. And Vienna-based early-stage investor Speed Invest raises Speed Invest 4 early-stage fund with 500 million euros. That is quite a lot. Chris, you want to take over the fintech for a change?
Yeah, going to fintech, there's a study by Solaris and Handelsblatt Research Institute revealing great opportunities for embedded finance in the European mobility sector. So there's still room in the market there. And then FTX, the European entity of FTX, is up for sale. According to press reports, there are 50 parties interested. The investment bank Perel Weinberg Partners is looking for a buyer. And so, yeah, one of probably the biggest stories right now in the whole tech and startup space anyway. Motive Partners acquired German venture capital firm Embedded Capital. And we also have an outlook on what was probably one of the most turbulent tech stories of 2022, basically the decline of crypto. And one article here says the crypto winter is about to become a crypto ice age, which was a fun movie. So, general news. I will go on until you stop me. Founder factories. Alumni from 344 European and Israeli unicorns have birthed 1,018 startups since 2008. So that's an interesting article also. Giving those of us hope who have started a startup but then did not succeed in the first place. But as the old song goes, if at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. It's, I think, Destiny's Child. I hope. So not really a startup, but a company with an iconic product. This article is just here to show you how hard companies have to fight right now to stay afloat, because the small car parts supplier BIA produces the iconic Mercedes star, but now has to file for insolvency. But also because they got rid of so many Mercedes models with the star, actually, and while the star was on top of the cars, they are now putting it just on the car itself, because so many people actually broke off the stars, so because they wanted to wear it as a necklace. It's a whole different story. Berlin startup to wrap homes in second skin as heating costs soar. So that is a reaction to the supposedly German energy crisis of the winter, which so far has not materialized, but it's also only like mid-December. And we have the HR startup Workmotion that cuts 20% of their workforce, same as Grover, who laid off 10% of its employees to reach break even. Fundraisings. Show me the money.
Before that, I would like to add that the energy crisis did not arrive here yet, but I have to say now it's getting really, really cold, up to -7 degrees Celsius here in Germany at night. We really need to heat. Plus today we had an unfortunate day with frozen ground, and we had fresh rain falling on it. So there was ice all over. Basically, we didn't leave the house today. That was really dangerous, but it will get better tomorrow. And I personally also hope that we did a lot of fuss about the energy crisis and it will not materialize, but we'll only see in January and February next year. Going now to a little bit better news, a very few and selected fundraisings. Munich-based healthcare startup T-Medica raises 25 million euros. Tactile, a New York City and Berlin-based software as a service startup enabling businesses to make automated decisions, closing a 20 million Series A funding. Kuno Medical from Berlin raises 10 million euros in Series A funding. They win Bertelsmann Investment and Dieter von Holzbrink Ventures as new investors. Existing investors also invested along. Ostrom lends 9.3 million euros to help use less electricity, and Tabline backs 31.7 million euros to provide on-demand funds to early and late-stage companies.
I also have to say that some of the stuff we say sounds as if we hear those names for the first time, but it's also really complicated startup names every time.
Yeah,
it's as if we are a bit dumb reading the stuff, but it's sometimes so hard to guess. People, get easier names for your companies, please.
Yes, exactly. And Tabline was the last news. And so, guys, thank you very much for being with us yet another year. This is already, depending on how you count, year number 8 for Startuprad.io. And Chris joined me the first time for the May 2015 recording. So it's almost 7 years.
Well, as they say, time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly. We will be back in January 2023. Enjoy your holidays. Frohe Weihnachten und guten Rutsch. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And of course, we do have a lot of stay ahead of the curve down here, from cryptos, how to scam investors, 4 steps. It's an article about the scams. European Banking Authority, go green, praying for the golden valuation, and introducing a 16-set growth guide to growth matrix. So that's it. Sorry, Chris. There you go. Ho, ho,
Nice.
ho.
No, I didn't have anything to add. Pa-ra-pa-pum-pum.
Enjoy your holidays in New York. Do you stay in the city or you get out?
No, I'll stay in the city. It will just be me, myself, and I.
You, yourself, and you. Enjoy, you 3 guys, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. Be back next time. And guys, take a break. Get the energy. I think everybody will need it the next year. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.